Hello, good evening. Thank you for joining us on this video. For those of you that are offering Psych 103 learning process, I'm making this video to augment what we're supposed to have before this. We have had series of classes, but then there are some things that we were supposed to do based on our new course outline. So this video is going to be a makeup for that. And then again, we missed class on Monday this week, and so this is a makeup for that class. So please follow, pay attention, listen, take notes. You can like and share the video if you find it interesting. So today we'll be looking at some of the things that we have talked about before, but in a more concise and deeper way. And so we'll be looking at the definition and explanation of the concept of learning. We'll look at behavioral and social cognitive schools of learning. We will talk about types of learning, nature and process of learning. We'll also look at learning curves, and then we will look at finally factors that affect learning. Like I said earlier, we were supposed to have this class before now, but because of the disparities in the course outline that we had before, that was the reason why we're having it now. So a lot of things that we were talking about before are repeated here, particularly from the first part of the video. And so even if you had that before, you pay attention so that we flow together. Remember, we defined learning obviously before. We said learning has to do with change in human disposition or capability that persists over a period of time, and it is not simply attributable to processes of growth, and that is by Robert Gain. And now from the general perspective, we say learning is an acquisition or a relatively permanent change in behavior or knowledge as a result of experience or practice. We've talked about this before, so we don't need to waste much time on that. I know that you have that in your notes already. We also talked about stages of learning. That was particularly during our online classes, and we say that basically there are 5 stages of learning. And we say the first is the sensation stage, where you receive information from the 5 sense organs: the sense of sight, the sense of hearing, the sense of feeling, touch, smell, and taste. And of course, sight deals with your eyes, hearing deals with your ears, feeling is your skin and touch, then smell your nose, taste your tongue. These are the basic 5 organs that we have. And the second stage is the perception stage. That is what you make of the information you receive from these 5 sense organs. What you make of that information is what constitutes the second stage of the learning. Then the third stage is association. Association has to do with processing it. There's the ability to connect it with the new experience. You are learning something new. So what is the relationship between what you are learning new and what you have learned before? So that's association. Then we look at generalization. Generalization has to do with a stage where you establish a particular principle, a theory, that is making inferences. Inferences here can be the fact that you are so okay, we're now generalizing that if this happens, this is what will happen. And then finally, application. Application has to do with using that information that you have learned or the knowledge that you have learned to solve a real life situation, a problem in a real life situation. So you have talked about these things before. We also talked about some theories of learning before. But for today, we are going to look at behavioral and social cognitive schools of learning. Now, from the topic, you see that these are two different things. We are looking at behavior or behavioral and then social cognitive. Behavior, as we know, social cognitive in terms of social aspect and the cognitive aspect. So this has to do with two major paradigms in how we understand learning. And the behavioral aspect of it, of course, like we have discussed in some of the classes, we say that behavioral aspect of it is environmental driven, while the social cognitive aspect of it deals with the interaction of your behavior, your cognition, and your environment. That's where the social and the cognition aspect of it now comes in. And so we look at the comparison in terms of the importance, because this particular aspect of what we are doing today highlights some shifts in psychology, particularly from the viewing humans as passive responders to stimuli to a shift where they are recognized as active processors of experience. So environmental aspect of it just look at how we respond to stimuli, while the social cognitive aspect of it deals with how we process our experience. So that's just first part. Now we're going to look deeply now into the behavioral aspect of it. Now the behavioral perspective define learning as relatively permanent change in observable behavior, which of course results from environmental factors. We already have this particular understanding before. Relatively permanent change in behavior as a result of environmental factors. Now, in this case, now we're not looking at internal mental states, but we are focusing on what we can measure objectively. We're not looking at what we are not seeing. The behavioral school of thought is of the opinion that no. Don't look at what we are not seeing. What we can only see, what we can only classify in this case is what we are seeing. And the behavioral assumptions here are of the opinion that behavior is lawful and predictable if environmental variables are controlled. What that means is that behavior is actually influenced by our environment. The people around you influence the kind of behavior you exhibit. You cannot just be on your own and you start shouting. Something must have triggered you to start shouting. You cannot be on your own and start frowning. Somebody must have, or the environmental factors could be people around you, it could be the things you see must have triggered that particular behavior in you to begin to come out. That's what the behavioral aspect of it now talks about. Now you remember in our theory we said there are major contributors to this case. We talk about the contribution of Ivan Pavlov in classical conditioning. We talk about the contribution of Edward Thorndike and B.F. Skinner in operant conditioning. And then there was one I didn't mention, of course, maybe not because I forgot, but then maybe we had not gone there, with the contribution of John B. Watson. John B. Watson was one of the behaviorists that developed or advanced the concept of tabula rasa, which is the work done by philosopher John Locke. And according to John B. Watson, an individual is born with a mind that has nothing on it. He called that tabula rasa, like a clean slate, like if you carry an A4 paper that is nothing is written on it and you keep it somewhere. That's, according to him, that's what is on somebody's mind when the person is born. So it is what you write on the mind of an individual, according to John B. Watson, that remains there. And according to him, if you give him a list, or if you give him a group of 10 healthy young children, he will train some of them to be thieves, some of them to be engineers, some of them to be hero pilots, because according to him, nobody is born with anything. It is what the environment places on the person that the person eventually becomes. That's according to him. So that is one of the things. So all these ones are schools of thought in the area of behavioral school. These are some of the contributions in the school of thought of behavioral. Now, in the social cognitive, we have a perspective which conceptualizes learning as occurring through dynamic interplay or relationship between cognitive, behavioral, and environmental influences. And the social cognitive talks about not just the behavioral aspect. According to the social cognitive school of thought, somebody does not just learn by environmental influences. No, somebody learns in terms of the cognition. Environmental influences are there, but the behavioral aspect is also engraved. But remember here, the major concern, major emphasis is on the cognitive aspect of it, because according to the propounder of this school of thought, environment places certain things on you, yes. What you make out of that environment by your cognition, it depends on you as a person. And this is one of the major paradigm shifts, particularly in the area of learning, that acknowledges that an individual is a proactive agent who interprets, evaluates, and regulates their own learning experiences. So how you regulate your own learning experiences is different from how the other person will regulate their own learning experiences. And so this was majorly propounded by a psychologist called Albert Bandura. And Albert Bandura came particularly to challenge this behavioral school of thought. And he demonstrated that learning can occur observationally. You watch people doing things, and then within you now, even if you are not reinforced, even if you are not pushed, you watch, and then you integrate your own cognition into what they are doing, and then you learn from it. So basically, school of thought in this case now are just two here that we are looking at the behavioral school of thought, and then we're looking at the social cognitive school of thought. Like I said earlier, the behavioral school of thought emphasizes on environmental influences that shapes our behavior, while the social cognitive school of thought goes beyond only environmental influences and also recognizes our behavior and, most importantly, our cognition in how we react to certain things. And remember, in the behavioral, I mentioned three basic authors whose contributions shaped the behavioral school of thought. And I mentioned Ivan Pavlov in his classical conditioning. I mentioned Edward Thorndike and B.F. Skinner in operant conditioning. And I also mentioned John B. Watson, who emphasized the concept of tabula rasa as propounded by John Locke. Now, in the social cognitive school, one major propounder here is the works of Albert Bandura. Now, Albert Bandura, in observational learning mechanisms, he made mention of some observational learning mechanisms. And remember that in what he mentioned earlier, we talked about here, like in this case now, we say Bandura challenged strict behavior by demonstrating that learning can occur observationally. Now, these observational learning mechanisms, as we know, can occur through different models. They can occur through attention, they can occur through retention, they can occur through reproduction, and then motivation. How do we look at this? You pay attention to some things. Then when you grab that information, you return it or you keep it to yourself. And while you keep it to yourself, you are likely going to reproduce that which you have learned. And reproducing it will now make you, or which at some point in time will be motivated by so many other things. Now, these are the stages that we talk about, especially when we are talking about Albert Bandura's socio-cognitive school of thought. Now, according to him, a child does not simply imitate. It's not everything you do that a child may imitate. And that's the reason why most of the times you notice that they learn bad behavior more than good ones. So it's not everything. So they have the cognitive ability to selectively pay attention to one, return it, reproduce it, and get motivated. So they selectively attend to certain behaviors and they encode them. That's according to Albert Bandura. And of course, you know that it works in so many areas, because there is not everything that you, sometimes even with children around, you see that sometimes you are telling them something. What you are telling them, they are doing another thing, because they are selecting. Most of the times they are observing and selecting what they should learn and paying attention to it, and they can reproduce it later based on that which motivates them. So you have a television in your house where children are watching, and they're watching aggressive behavior, and that aggressive behavior is motivating them. So they pay attention, rapt attention, and they return that aggressive behavior in them, and they reproduce it by becoming aggressive towards other children, because they are motivated by some of the actions that are taken there. According to Albert Bandura in his observational learning, attention, retention, reproduction, and motivation are some of the major areas where learning occurs through observational modeling. Now, under types of learning, remember I mentioned something there concerning types of learning. Under types of learning, there are so many of them. If you read other books, you will see a whole lot of some types of learning. But for the sake of this class, we are going to be mentioning only 5. And these 5 we have already treated 2. Yes, we have treated 2. We have treated operant conditioning, and then we have treated classical conditioning. But generally, we are mentioning 5. We have learning through observation, which is what? Observational learning. I just talked about Albert Bandura just now concerning observational learning. He was one of the major propounders of observational learning. That is, according to him, we learn by observing others doing things, and he called that modeling kind of learning. So we've talked about operant conditioning, that was under trial and error. We talked about learning through association, classical conditioning. We are going to discuss learning through insight, what is called aha learning, and that was by Wolfgang Kohler. He called that sudden intuition. You are struggling to remember something, you are struggling to think of something, and all of a sudden an insight just entered into you, and you are like, aha. That's what Wolfgang called aha, or insight learning. Then the last one that we're going to discuss here is the latent kind of learning, where Edward Thurman talked about, a form of hidden, a form of an information that you learn, it is with you, but you only use it when situation occur. You only use it when there is need for it. You know how to drive a car, the knowledge is with you. You know how to cook, the knowledge is with you, but you only use it when there is need, or the need arises for it. There are some of these latent kind of learning that you learn them and you keep them there for ages without using them. The time may just come when there is need that will reinforce or will help you or ginger you to use that kind of learning. A lot of you now know how to ride a bicycle, but you have not ridden it for a very long time. Maybe a time will come, maybe you want to do play, so you can just pick a bicycle and begin to ride. That does not mean you are learning it that time. You have that thing already latently learned before, but then you are, using it now because a need occur. So there is a nature of learning curve here. I will look at it. Look at it from the learning curves. We have the key components, which are attention, retention, reproduction, and feedback or motivation. We discussed about that before. Now, I talked about a few things before, and some of them have been replayed here. You have stages of learning. I talked about some of them before, but these ones under the curve, they have replaced themselves, which I'm not going to discuss them much. We have cognitive stage, association stage, and autonomous stage. Of course, in the learning curve, you have them there provided. So the curves as presented, you can study it and see the rapid learning, the S-curve logistics, where you have performance and trial time. As trial time is increasing, performance is also increasing. But you get to a point where the performance may not be following straight. Now, under the S-curve, you have the performance and trial time, and initially you see that you are progressing, but the time will come where your leveling will go off because of your reduction in the steady growth. And there is also what we call the plateau effect. And the plateau effect is performance and practice time. You see that improvement started in the phase, but at a point in time, it became shallow. It was just going one direction. So this is just a learning curve. You might study it for your usage and have another understanding about it. Probably we have additional questions that we might want to ask about this. So with time we'll answer them. Now, what are the factors that affect learning? What are the factors that affect learning? Remember, it's one of the things that I talked about, say we are going to discuss before. Factors affecting learning is there. We talked about types of learning. We looked at nature of learning. We looked at learning curves. So we are going to look at factors that affect learning. Now, under the factors, generally we have what is called the nature versus nurture factors. The nature versus nurture factors. These are two major factors that affect learning. The natural factors and the nurture factors. Natural factors are the factors that you were born with. Hereditary traits that you were born with. So they have the cognitive factors, the biological factors, and the emotional factors. So these are factors that you were born with from the hereditary aspect of it. Your cognition, your biological makeup, and your emotional makeup makes your nature factors. Now, under nurture factors, you have the environmental factors, and environmental factors are also here. Environmental or experiential factors. You have the social. This one has to do with where you were brought up, where you grow up, the environment where you go, the environment that shaped the kind of person that you are. So we have the social and environmental. Emotional factors also play here too, yeah. Then we have instructional factors and the individual differences prior to the knowledge that you have. Quickly, let's now look at the nature factors. Remember, we said nature factors deal with biological and cognitive influences. We have the biological and cognitive here, then emotional. So there are three of them are here. The biological factors, number one. The cognitive factors, number one. Biological factors, number two. Emotional factors, number three. Under cognitive factors, we have the intelligence and cognitive abilities. This deals with the innate cognitive capability of an individual, and it affects your speed, and efficiency in learning. What you were born with, your intelligence right from when you were born with. So it's one of the factors that affects learning. So some people are born very intelligent, some people are not very, very intelligent when they were born. So emphasis here is that intelligence and cognitive ability, which is the innate cognitive capability, has a way of affecting how speedy and effective or efficient you learn. So someone with a higher cognitive ability will actually learn quicker and understand more complex tasks and problem solving skills compared to someone with a low cognitive ability. Another aspect on that cognitive factor is the memory and information processing. Now it is your ability here to encode and store, then retrieve information, which is also influenced by how your neurobiological development took place. So remember, on cognitive factors, we are looking at factors affecting learning. So we say there are generally two. We have the biology, the nurture and the nature. Under nurture, we have cognitive, biological, and emotional dispositions. Now we are discussing the cognitive. Now we say the first one is intelligence, the second one is memory formation. How your memory was formed and developed has a way of influencing how you learn. For instance, working memory is capable of, is linked to prefrontal cortex. And the prefrontal cortex is one of the part of the brain that helps you in memory and recall. So if your prefrontal cortex is not properly developed, it will affect how your memory will be working. So these are more of biological and innate, this is more of cognitive aspect of what you were born with. The next under cognition is attention and concentration. Neurodevelopmental factors, like we say here, determine how an individual as well can focus. So your attention span and executing some certain function in learning is very, very significant. How you pay attention. And this is where you have some children having attention deficit. And once they have attention deficit, it becomes difficult in the cognitive aspect for them to learn. So one of the nature aspect of what affects learning is the cognitive factors. And we say under cognitive factors, we have intelligence and cognition, cognitive ability, memory and information processing, and finally attention and concentration. I hope you are following. Now let's look at biological factors. Biological and physiological factors. Here we deal with brain development and neurobiology. Like I've explained in one of our classes, your brain is fully developed when you are 23. So learning most of the times is predictable by maturation. Most of the times it's predictable by maturation. And sometimes this maturation could be in terms of your neural circuit. Like I said, 25 years is when your brain is fully developed. So when your neural circuit is not completely developed, learning sometimes may not necessarily be difficult, but there are certain things that you may not be able to learn and grasp them, because you cannot tell a child of 7, 8 to study learning process and be able to understand. The child will definitely not understand, isn't it? Because at that point in time, the brain has not fully developed to a point where it can accommodate complex tasks, just the way you are doing now. And at this age now, it will get to a point where you will get advanced in age. And what you will be learning or how you will interpret things will be different from the way you are interpreting it now. So it is important to pay attention to that. That's first part of it. The second part of the biological is genetic factors and temperament. Now, there are some people that have inherent traits like persistence, curiosity, and cognitive attitudes. And this will also influence how they engage and respond to learning. For instance, I have a student who is always coming and asking questions, who's always curious, always curious. One of your level mates, she's always very curious to know, sir, can you help me? What is this and that? So level of curiosity, persistence, and your cognitive attitude towards your learning also influences how you respond and how you learn. So there are conditions, like there are neurological conditions that could sometimes hamper or affect negatively how you learn, like attention deficit and hyperactive disorder is one of the conditions that can actually make you not find it difficult to learn. So this is one of the ways that we say that biology can shape how an individual learns. The same under biological and physical factors, the next one is health, nutrition, and sleep. You know, some of you are in school, you don't eat well. You're always concentrating on snacks and, snacks and Coke, snacks and soda. It's very important that your nutrition also affects your learning. What you consume affects your learning. So eating well is not just supposed to be a habit, but it's something that you really need to take into cognizance, especially when you want to learn. Now, your health too is another very important aspect. Physical health. Somebody who is not strong will find it difficult to learn, isn't it? Even when you are in class and you are not strong. Say you are having headache or stomach ache, or you have a head condition, it will be difficult for you to be able to learn. So it's one of the things. Then sleep. Normally you are expected to sleep for a minimum of 6 hours in a day. That's proper sleep, minimum of 6 hours. As I'm talking to you now, some of you may be watching this video when you must have pressed your phone from morning till evening. And then in the middle of the night when you are supposed to be sleeping, you will be pressing your phone again. Deep sleep, when you are deprived of deep sleep, it becomes difficult for you to, develop your learning capability to the fullest. So sleep deprivation, malnutrition, and inadequate malnutrition or inadequate nutrition and bad health situation could impair a lot of things in your learning. It could impair your memory, it could impair your learning efficiency, it could impair your attention. So very, very important. Now, under nature, we have discussed cognitive factors, we have discussed biological factors. Now let's look at emotional disposition. Emotional disposition is also biologically influenced. Your self-efficacy, your temperament, personality and temperament, self-efficacy. How do you possess yourself? How do you look at yourself? Do you look at yourself as someone who can do this? And that's the reason why I keep encouraging you. People who come to the university and graduate with first class, they don't have two heads. It is something that you can do. Alright? Begin now and you can do it. There is a popular musician called Nas. Some of you don't know him. Nas, that's his name. He sang one song titled I know I can. I know I can. I know I can be what I wanna be. Be what I wanna be. If I work hard at it. You see, that song is there. You can go and listen to it yourself. You can work hard and achieve that which you want to achieve. Nobody is dumb. Nobody is born with two heads. Although their intelligence level may differ, but that doesn't mean overlearning or repeated consistent practice can help you to outsmart those that are even born with very high IQ. So you learn consistently. You learn consistently. Your determination to achieve, your determination to study, your persistence, your resilience, and your confidence in taking challenges. Not that when they give you a challenge, you now fall back and begin to complain that I cannot do this, I cannot do. No, you can do it. Yes, you can. I'm talking to you. You can. Yes, you can do it. Believe me, you can do it. So face it head on. So we are done with nature. Under biological influences, have cognitive, biological, and then we have emotional disposition. And let's look at the nurture. Nurture has to do with the environment where we were brought up, the place where we grew up, how we grew up in the place. I gave an example one day of two identical twins that are born in Lagos State, for instance, and one is taken to Corona Private School in Lagos Island, while the other one is in Ajegunle. Both of them are in primary school, both of them are in secondary school. Which of them do you think will perform better academically? Your guess is my guess too. Alright? So environment also plays a very significant role in individuals' learning experience. And factors that arise from your environment, your experiences, your social interaction, the people you interact with. You know, it's very, very important. You are in UI now, interacting with people that are experts. It will shape your kind of learning better than someone who doesn't have this opportunity to interact with people of this nature. So you use this as an advantage to learn. So under nurture, there are also four. Under nurture, there are four basic conditions. The first one is social and environmental factors. Social and environmental factors. Nature we had only three, Abi. Yes, nature we had only three. So nurture we have five, I think so, yes. First is social and environmental factors. Under social and environmental factors, we have family and peer influence. A family that is supportive has a way of helping a child learn more. If you have a family that supports you, you know, it will help you. You have parents or aunties or people that are supporting you to learn. Maybe you go home, you give them, as they give you assignments, you talk to them, they help you. That's a way of helping you, pushing you to learn more. They help you, they teach you. You learn from them, you learn from school. Then peer relations. Peer relation has to do with your friends, and that's the reason why we always encourage you to peer learn. Gather yourselves, do tutorials among yourselves. If you don't understand something, and like I'm talking now, what I'm saying you may not understand, but if your fellow student explains it to you, you might understand it better than the way I'm talking about it now. So collaborative learning is very, very important, and it plays a very important role in knowledge acquisition. Second is socioeconomic status. So socioeconomic status has to do with your access to resources, educational opportunities, and some stimulating factors in the environment that affect your learning. Access to resources has to do with things like you want to read in the night, there is no light. You want to work out in the night, there is no light. You want to do some assignment, you don't have a computer. So all these things are part of the things that help. Or if you don't have a phone, These things are part of the things that help you in learning. Educational opportunities has to do with what are the kind of opportunities in education that you are exposed to. So children who have resources tend to outperform those that don't have resources. For instance, now there are some of you that will watch this video through another person's phone. The person who has the phone might watch the video over and over again. You may not have the opportunity to watch it several times. So you might miss a lot of things. And the person who has the phone will go back to it and touch it again to be able to grasp. So it's very, very important. Socioeconomic status also play a very important role in how we learn. Now, another thing under social and environmental factor is cultural context. What is your norm about a particular thing you are learning? What are the expectations of your family? What are the family values? Will also shape how you learn. All right. Now, for instance, they are teaching you sex education, and your family values, your religious values does not promote something of that nature. It has a way of influencing how you learn. So there are some collectivist cultures that emphasize collaborative learning, whereas some cultures emphasize that individuals should learn on their own or independently solve their problem. So these things are very, very important aspects of what you will need to know, especially when it comes to social and environmental factors. So the social and environmental factors I just mentioned are three. I talked about family and peer influence, socioeconomic status, and cultural context. Now let's look at emotion and motivational factors. Emotional and motivational factors. First one under it is motivation. Now, while some aspects of motivation may have biological roots, it is important for you to understand that it is heavily shaped by environmental reinforcement, goals, rewards, all these things. Now, when someone is intrinsically motivated and that motivation is driven by a particular interest, the person may get to learn more. My younger sister, who is in this class, has so much interest in education, and as a result of that, she has always placed it in front of her, even when it looks like there may be no hope, but she will be like, no. She's always putting it in front of her, and she's in the university now. So you see, that is an intrinsic motivation that is driven by her interest in education, and that supports her deeper engagement in educational activity. That alone is enough for her to learn more. Another one is stress and anxiety. Now, environmental stressors like academic pressure or chaotic home environments have a way of negatively impacting how we learn. So you are in university now on academic pressure, you are under so much intense pressure. It might have a way of affecting how you will learn if you don't manage it well. So you need to manage academic pressure very well. Going from one class to another, especially now that you are 100 level, from one class to another, and then sometimes you come to school 7 a.m. and go back 7 p.m. That's another way of shaping it. So if you are not careful, it might affect the way you learn. Then your homes, your environment where you come from, very important. Don't let your home, your chaotic home, or your environment at home define who you are or who you will become. The world is not in a competition. And what you become today is a consequence, will become tomorrow is the consequences of what you are planting today. And so you start planting the seed of resilience, seed of strength, seed of motivation, seed of, how do I put it? Seed of that which I am strong. I can do this. Seed of I can do. Forget whether you have a bad home, that your family is not in good shape or whatever. What about you as a person? What do you want to become? Do you want to continue to toe that line? Then if not, you need to make a difference. So very, very important. These things have a way of shaping how we learn. I come from a family where people are not very educated. All right, not very educated. But I said that is not going to define me. I'm going to make a change. And today I'm teaching, I'm lecturing. And so it has a way, when you don't look at your past and your not past, when you don't look at your background and allow it to define who you become, then you move and go places. You define who you become and not allow your background to define who you become. So the third one under nurture is instructional and pedagogical factors. Instructional factors has to do with methods of teaching. How is Mr. Pig teaching you? How is Mr. Pig teaching you? What is he teaching? The teaching, or what he is teaching, is it affecting, is it helping in any way? The environment he places before you, does it foster your learning? So this is very important, very important. And that's the reason why when we meet this class, I felt like, okay, let me actually do a video and see whether this one we are doing online can replace the one we do in class and which one will go better. That's teaching methods. How your teachers, your tutors teaches you also influences how you learn. Under instructional factors, we also have what is called learning environment. Now, an environment that is safe, an environment that is stimulating, an environment that is structured, an environment that is engaging, has a way of helping you learn. If an environment is very noisy, is overcrowded, is not safe, of course you won't be able to learn very well. Like when we are in LLT, I will keep telling you, reduce your noise. Because when you are making a lot of noise, it may be difficult for somebody to be able to communicate very well and you listen and understand. So a noisy environment, an environment that is not stimulating, an environment that is overcrowded, an environment that is safe, is unsafe, I mean, will definitely hamper or impede your learning. Last but not the least is under instructional factors is feedback and reinforcement. So a feedback that is timely and constructive has a way of strengthening how you learn. If you do something and somebody gives you a feedback constructively and on time, it has a way of helping you to learn. I give you an exam or a CA, you quickly bring it back and then I give you a feedback. It will encourage you to learn more. And also reinforcement. Reinforcement has a way of shaping, your engagement in the future and persistence. You do something good and I reward you. That has a way of helping you to be able to learn more, to be able to understand better. Now, still under nurture, number 4 is individual experiences and prior knowledge. You know what is prior knowledge now? Having a knowledge about something before. You have experienced that already. So when you now come to being exposed to it, it's not something new to you. Like when I started this lecture, I said, those of you that attended online, it will be easier for you because from the first 2-3 slides, I was still repeating what we discussed online and even in class. So when an environment exposes you to some of the things, learning them becomes easy. Now here I say that environmental exposure, education, and life experiences shape the schemas that guide new learning. Schemas are like cognitive maps, cognitive pictures. So you are in school now, but you have a cognitive map of how your home looks like. So when I'm describing a home, you can use that schema to be able to link it with what I'm trying to explain. So it has a way of shaping your learning. And then under individual experiences, another point here is learning preferences and styles. Now environmental exposure help individuals to discover whether they learn best virtually, auditorily, or kinesthetically. How best do you learn? Do you learn auditorily when you listen, people talk to you? Or when you see them do it? Or when you practice it? That is kinesthetically, when you practice it. So if you look at your preferences, like when we were talking about your study, especially when we were doing your orientation, some people prefer to read in the night, some people prefer to read in the day. Some people prefer to go and do TDB. Some people just want to read a few hours and they're okay. So what is your learning style? What is your learning preferences? Stick with what works for you. Don't imitate others. We're not in a competition, okay? So thank you so much for your attention. Here is a link for your attendance and short quiz. Copy the link and paste it in your browser and attend to it, because I'm going to take attendance for everybody. Drop your comments if you are finding it difficult to access the link, so that I will know how I will get it to you. Thank you and God bless you. See you again.